This next session is Raising Readers. It's the book is called How to Raise a Reader, and it's co-authored by Maria Russo and Pamela Paul. Maria Russo will be joining us today. Maria is the children's books editor at the New York Times, where she handles thousands of children's books each year. Her new book, How to Raise a Reader, I meant to bring a copy, but they're all over for sale at the tent over there, and she can sign them after. Perfect. This is the book. It made sense to kick off the festival with a conversation on the many tips found inside this book, because we're all here because we're all either avid readers or want to be or need to be. Joining Maria today is on this conversation is Francis Mateo, who's a poet, actor, and most importantly, a local parent in Washington Heights. Francis is one of the first people ever to present his work at Word Up's new location and has performed it there many times since, including one time when his daughter napping on top of him while he read. So he's certainly raising readers. Please welcome them.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Let me just set up this mic real quick. Hopefully I can make it stay. Like this. Like to. You want me to take it off? I'll take it off. Try to have like Roberto Carlos when he used to do the sing. Yeah, cool. So thank you again, and good morning. I am here with Maria Russo. Maria Russo just published How to Raise a Reader, and we're going to have a conversation on how to raise a reader. And my name is Francis Mateo, and I'll be moderating. So the first question I want to ask Maria is, what was the genesis of the book? What was the reason? What made that spark to say, like, okay, I need to write something for people to understand how to become readers and how to have their children read?
Well, so I have this incredible job where I edit children's books, reviews, and articles at the New York Times. So I get asked a lot of questions, and after a while, it just became clear to me that this is a topic that people are really intensely interested in and urgent about. There's a lot of worry out there, and there's just a lot of questions. And so when my colleague Pamela Paul and I wrote a guide, sort of an online digital guide called How to Raise a Reader, it like went viral instantly, and people just bombarded us with more questions. And one of those questions was, can you make this into a book? So we just thought, of course, who wouldn't want this as a book in your house that you can kind of flip through as your kids are growing up. And we were lucky enough to get the publisher, here's our editor, Mary Ellen, on board. And so we wanted to make a beautiful book that you could keep in your home and refer to as you're raising your kids.
Excellent, thank you. And I've read the book, and the book is really amazing. It's one of those things you have to read a couple of times, and even depending on the stage. It reminded me actually of the work of Shakespeare, because it depends what stage in your life you're in, you're going to understand certain characters.
Right.
Like you cannot be a kid and play Othello, let's say, because you're not going to understand the humanity of that character. And it's the same thing here. You divide it in 5 parts.
Right.
And I think depending on where your kid is, that's where you have to read and reread.
And that's
so
the thing,
that you
right?
understand. Yeah.
When you are to raise a reader, it's this lifetime journey, and it starts when they're a baby. And we really say it starts even before your baby arrives, because you have to work on your own reading too, and give value to your own reading to be a parent that is raising a reader. It's a really good thing for your kids to see you reading and to see you enjoying reading, because that's one of our big messages. Our society lately has turned reading into this area of stress for kids and competition and pressure from school. So you as a parent at home can really change that, can really create a different kind of atmosphere, but starting when they're a baby. And one of the ways you do that is by being a reader yourself. So that's something we emphasize. And yeah, it does. It's, I have 3 kids. My oldest is 16 and my youngest is 9. So I've been doing this for 16 years and seen 3 of them go through all of these stages. And it's true. It is Shakespearean. There's always something different. There's always something new to know about kids' books when you have a kid or more than one.
Well, more than one,
Yes,
indeed.
you do.
We were chatting before about myths when it comes to reading, and one of the things is like people believe that the earlier a kid reads, the better reader she will become in the future. Is this true or false?
This is definitely a myth, and this is one of the myths that we're really, really excited to debunk in the world, because somehow it's gotten out there that reading earlier is reading better. It is better for the kid, and so that's put all this pressure on parents to teach kids how to read when they're 4 and 5, and most kids aren't ready to read at 4 and 5. If a kid is ready to read, that's great, and you've set the ground for that by reading to them when they're babies and toddlers, but the fact is every brain is different, and the range of when a kid is ready to learn to read, it's incredible, but it's really between 3 and 7, even 8, before they're really ready to independently read. And before, it doesn't do any good to push for them to read at 6 if they're not ready at 6. And they will not be a better reader for being pushed. In fact, it might even slow them down in some ways because they'll feel shame and stress over it. So our message is, let your kid read when your kid is ready to read. And this can be hard, especially now, because your kids aren't there yet, but schools for some reason have become very focused on teaching kindergartners how to read. It's not a doable thing. I can tell you, to take a class full of 5-year-olds and have every one of them reading by the end of that year. It's just, it's not going to happen. And this is, I feel sorry for the kindergarten teachers that this is put on them, because it's just not realistic. And and one of the really cool facts we discovered writing this book is that in other countries, like in Scandinavia and in Germany, they don't even start to teach reading until kids are 7. Because for this reason, right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend time teaching a 6-year-old to how to read who's not ready. And you could spend that time in the classroom better teaching other things that the 6-year-old brain is ready. Every 6-year-old brain can actually do math. Every 6-year-old brain can do art and music and of course social skills, social emotional learning. That's what you can really spend your time on with a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And of course it's great. The 6-year-olds who can read, great. They should be supported in that, but don't feel bad if your child is not reading in kindergarten or in 1st grade. It's fine, and they will be reading when it's ready for them, and it's no indication of how strong a reader they'll be later when that brain is ready. And of course, Francis, you wouldn't know about this, but parents of boys especially need to remember this. Boys read later than girls. It's one of the many things that parents of girls and boys notice is different between the two.
I just want to make a mental note, and also for everyone, that is 3 to 7. I mean, it's because sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves, and it's like we go for like 3 to 3.5, and it's 3 to 7. Like, you have all that amount of time to really shape up a reader. And
Yeah.
I just
And if your 7-year-old isn't quite comfortable reading on his own yet, read to him. It's okay. You still have a job there, which is keeping the atmosphere around reading focused on fun and discovery and reading together. Reading with your child is just one of the most bonding things you can do. It's setting a habit, it's setting a ritual around reading in your home, it's creating memories for your child. So don't fret about your 7-year-old who really does just still wants to be read to. Just read to him, and eventually, I promise you, everyone learns to read. Of course, there's some problems that might be there, like dyslexia or even visual problems that might be in the way, and be aware of that and talk to experts if you suspect that that's what's going on. But other than that, just enjoy the process, enjoy the ride at whatever pace your kid is going.
I have another question concerning the myth. There's another myth that says that parents should teach their kids to read as soon as possible.
And that's a part of the myth, right? That it's on you as a parent. Somehow you just, I got to start teaching them how to read. I got to start, giving them the letters, and that's the teacher's job, And your job is really in some ways much more fun, right? You don't have to worry about are they at level A or level B. You just have to make reading a fun thing for them. So your job, and this is actually the hardest job I think for parents, is finding books for your kid, finding the right book, finding books that your kid loves. That's a lot of work, and that's something you have to kind of really commit to, and that's a better place to put your energy than like, oh my God, is he at level A or level B? And he's in first grade and the teacher says he's not, he's just at the grade level. I thought he'd be above the grade level, or he's not at the grade level. You can step back from that a little. That's the teacher's problem, really. But you say, but does my kid love his books? Does my kid love, reading Dog Man? That's that passion is what you should be looking for, because the fact is, kids who read for pleasure are kids who do well in school. So it seems kind of counterintuitive, but if you want your kids to do well in school, your better method is make them into people who read voluntarily, and then that all else will follow.
One of the things that Veronica was saying at the beginning was just like having free books so that you can have all over the house. It's in a chapter in the book says that you need to have books everywhere, because that way the child can just trip on a book and just grab it and start reading. And in the book it says like you need to have some in the bathroom as well. That day I immediately went and I just put a couple of books in the bathroom. I put a couple of kids' books as well as adult books, just so that they can have that. And that's one of the things that you find in the book. And that's my daughter that wants to, I guess, ask a question. Sorry about it.
She wants to be read to. They love to be read to.
Another question about the myths is once a child reads, we should take away the picture books.
Oh yeah, this is a terrible, terrible idea that people have, that pictures are only for illustrated books, and images are there only for while they're learning to read, and then once they learn how to read, they're done with that stage. That's no. Picture books are for life. We all remember the picture books from our childhood, I'm sure, with such emotion and such fondness, and it's really important. So that's because picture books are an art form. They're an art form that works. Not just the pictures aren't there just to tell you what the words are saying. They're actually part of the story, right? In a great picture book, the story is told through the images and the words. There'll be some information that you probably noticed when you read to your girls that's in the pictures and it's not in the words. And that's the most fantastic thing, right? That your child, while you're reading the words, they're reading too, because they're getting information from the pictures. Like, oh, what's that goblin doing in the corner? The words aren't saying anything, but I see that goblin. I wonder what's going to happen. That process is so powerful. It's the first step of reading. Then once they start reading, there are many children who are visual readers who just would prefer to, again, get information through images. And this is great. And this is what graphic novels do so well. And there's so many good graphic novels now for children, because I think the publishing industry is finally realizing visual reading is reading. So a lot of times when people will, the question I get the most is probably, my 10-year-old boy doesn't read, what can he read? My first answer is always, does he have a lot of graphic novels? Because boys too, especially, tend to be the visual readers. So that's an easy way, I think, to just right away, if you have a child who you can't seem to interest in reading independently, does that child have a lot of visual books? No matter what age, even teenagers. I would say, have you tried graphic novels?
And something you touch in the book is that the fact that there's two things at play when you read. It's like the reading of the letters and also the visual reading. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because that to me, you understand it, but you don't grasp it as a concept unless you see it.
And I think it's because our whole culture has become fixated on children reading words. We've sort of lost the forest for the trees there. The big picture of reading involves images too. When so much of our culture is visual now too. We get information by what we see, right? You have you're on the airplane, the emergency card will tell you what to do, and you follow that story through images, right? And these kids today, growing up in this digital visual world, they're really used to getting information from images. So why not foster that as part of their reading life? Make sure that they have books where they're getting information from images and learning how to follow a story and follow a sequence in pictures, right? That's the first step of reading. It's not just decoding, like seeing the B and hearing the buh sound and connecting. That's part of it, but the real first step of reading happens so much before that, which is, can they follow a sequence down a page, and that sequence can just be pictures of things that are happening. And so wordless picture books are fantastic for this. So if your child can read a wordless book before they can connect that buh with the B, it's so exciting. That child is reading. So I could talk about this all day, but the visual part of reading is so important, and really that's one of the things that you can do early, so that by the time your kid is in first and second grade, you won't have to be so worried about what reading level they're on, because they probably will. If they're someone who's reading a lot, those tend to be the kids that are on the grade level. But before they can read the words, they can read the pictures. And there's so many good ones right now for age 5, 6. Very few words, but lots of pictures telling the story. And I'm sure I've recommended lots of my favorites for you guys, but it's a really great time for those early chapter books for kids, and they're very, very, very visual and just a few words.
I have a question concerning the digital era, and I'm not saying how can we compete, because compete means that we're going to give too much to it, but how can we integrate? Because we are hooked on these things. We are hooked on our phones, on our tablets, on our computers, and everything is just through this modern use.
I mean,
how can we deal with that? How can we incorporate the not using it until we have to, and have just the books? I mean, how can you talk about that?
There's a couple ways to approach it. One is to remember that phones and digital devices are a habit, right? That kids get into, that we get into. But books can be a habit too, right? So what you're trying to do with your kid as young as possible is develop the habit of reading, so that they know when they, another great thing with children's books is the series, right? So most books that you'll find for 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, it's not just one, it's a whole series. They read one, they crave the next one. Dog Man, just, the 7th one just came out, and I can't tell you how my son and his friends, he just turned 9, like they've been waiting for this next Dog Man. And so that kind of thing can create an urgency and pleasure around books that can, I don't know if we won't use the word compete, but it can be similar to what happens with their devices. The second thing is, this is a funny thing, but teenagers like to read physical books more than they like to read ebooks and on their phone. And why do you think that is? Well, first of all, there is something about the physical experience of reading that is just more pleasurable than reading on a screen. And second of all, these teenagers are on their screens all day, and they like the escape that a book gives them. I mean, it's funny, but we can see it as a treat for them. So publishers have almost stopped making ebooks for kids for this reason, because they don't want them. They want a physical book. So the books are there. I often say, I think the problem is often just that they don't have a book handy that they like. And that's why, they'll go right to the screen. So again, this is a hard job for parents, getting lots of books into their life that they're going to like, and not judging. Maybe they're all comics. Maybe they're all, potty humor, or, maybe they're not even what you would consider a book. Maybe your kid really wants to read like the NBA statistics for 2018. Like I get my son that book every year because he will read that book, and it's a book, so broaden your idea of what a book is, and bring that into your kid's life and keep those around. The thing we were saying about that, having books in the house is this powerful tool for creating a reader. Even aside from reading to your kids obviously is great, but we were surprised by these studies too that show just having books in the house is an indicator of someone who will become a reader later. So stoop sales, there doesn't have to be expensive to fill your house with books. The stoop sales, the garage sales, the sales at schools, swapping with friends, especially with these series books where they're reading them quickly. Oh look, and we have a children's book. One of the great graphic novels of last year, Jerry Craft, is here. So if you're looking for a graphic novel for that 10-year-old boy I was just talking about, Jerry Craft's book New Kid is a great choice. So it's just such a great time to bring all this into your kids' life. These incredible books, these incredible artists who are making them for this generation of kids. So you guys with the little ones are really lucky right now that there's so much to give them that is it's gonna we're a digital culture now. They're gonna have devices, but I don't worry for this generation because they love books, and there are great people making these books. And oh my God, and it's Chris Myers too. We have like two geniuses of children's books here with us today. So it's just, it gives me chills to think of these people doing this for our children now. So I don't worry, and I'm trying to spread this message of optimism around children's reading because it's just such a good time.
Veronica, do we have time for questions from the audience? Yes. So let's go to okay. Anyone has any questions? Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, it's less a question, more a comment. We're talking about the visual component of children's books. I think it's really important, especially in communities like Washington Heights, Inwood, where parents may not be completely comfortable reading in English. It's important for parents to use those books, picking up on the visual clues just as a child would, and asking about, well, what do you think happens next? How does the kitten get down out of the tree? That kind of thing. And so making the parents as comfortable reading these simple books as children should be.
It's true. And books are a great way to learn about a new culture for grown-ups too. And you learn a lot reading children's books. And just because you didn't grow up in this culture is no barrier to you raising kids who read these books, and that's another thing that is, my dad didn't grow up speaking English, and he was reading once to my son, and he said, I just wish no one read to me when I was a child, and it was so sad for me, but because my grandparents were too intimidated by English, I think they wouldn't do that. So that's another message we can really give to parents who are bilingual, who are immigrants. You don't have to be perfect when you read to your kids. That's okay. none of us are perfect. Kids can hear you make a mistake. Kids, we all make mistakes. Just, get that book in front of them and enjoy it and share it with them.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Balaguer. I'm a children's writer. I became a children's writer when I raised my children 25 years ago. Because when I came to this country as an immigrant, I feel that it seems that it's something lost. There is no connection in the classroom at all that my children and the community and the cultures and tradition and values from our Dominican Republic. And then that is when I wrote Criando, that is a book that reflects the culture. But this is what I become, children's writer. And this is something very important. Parent has to be something that has to be in focus is when you buy books for your children, get something that they have a connection because children looking for something that it connects their roots. And also bilingual books there is no often, and they try the way that they perform try the argument for the children is not connected with them. And us that we are from Caribbean, for example, they have a different values and a different tradition and culture. That this is very important and something that we have to reflect. In my house, what you said at the beginning when I heard is that we have to have the house full of books in order to get a successful children's reading for all the life and also to close the achievement gap that is very important for us.
Thank you so much. Such an important comment. And Francis and his wife Marla here are Carla and Marla, his daughter, are raising bilingual children, as you know. So I think Francis can really speak to how this works, how important it is, and to the fact that, like you, there are so many authors now publishing books that show the diverse children in our communities and our country. And it's so important for children to have books that show them who they are, right? We have the famous phrase from Dr. Rubin Sims Bishop, windows and mirrors. Children need books that are windows into the world outside of themselves and their families, and they need books that are mirrors that show them themselves. So, Francis, do you want to talk a little bit about your
Of course I do.
and Carla? Yes.
Thank you so much. On that note, I have to say, because we mainly speak Spanish at home, sometimes, most of the time, I read a book in a Dominican version, meaning I'm not reading what the book says, I'm translating. And I'm just describing the pictures in a way that I know my daughter will understand. I'm like, oh, Marla, look, and now she's going to eat rice and beans. And the character is probably eating cereal or something else. I think that works at home for us, so she can relate to what's happening in the book.
That is brilliant. We talk about, and I wish we had that, we could change the pictures too. We say change the words. A lot of the older children's books are racist and they're sexist. And you don't have, if you come across a book like that, you got it from the library, you didn't know, don't read those words to your child. You can change the words. It's okay. And I love this. You can change what's happening so that the child in the book is eating food that your family eats and following traditions that your family follows. It's brilliant. That's in the next edition.
One of the things is when is there going to be any translation? Sorry, I will wrap up right now. So, is there going to be translating? Are you going to be translating the book soon?
So here's our editor. She can tell you. We haven't yet started to think about that because it would actually be have to be significantly redone with the book lists and certain other kind of cultural differences. But I would love it. I would love to bring this message to other countries, especially China right now is an interesting situation where they're trying to build a culture of children's reading really from scratch. Their tradition didn't include reading to children outside of school until very recently. So, okay. Into Spanish, do you think? Or okay, got them. Okay.
Noted.
Yeah, we should have actually. We could do a Spanish edition. We could do that just for American Spanish speakers. Yeah. Yeah, and there are more and more books, great books being translated so that it's not just the facing page translation that they used to do, but in Spanish. You know, like I just saw that Matt de la Pena, Love, Amor. Have you seen that? So nice. Just all the same book, all in Spanish.
So I'm getting a lot of cues, so I think that's our time for today. So thank you so much for staying here, asking the questions. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Veronica, for having this. And thank you for inviting me as well. Thank you, everyone.
So great.
Have a good day.